technical difficulties. Again, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Ben, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. Also, thanks to your Channel 10, because when I threw my very first pitch at Petco Park back in May of 2008, Channel 10 was the only station that sent out a reporter, interviewed me that afternoon, did a piece on 6 o'clock, then went to the game, got the picture, the video of the actual pitch, and played it again at 11. So thank you so very much. I'd like to also thank the fundraising team here at the Family Health Centers in San Diego and their amazing volunteers that are here today for not only inviting me to come speak with you, but also for putting on these really good tamale lunches. I had the pleasure of attending the previous luncheon where they had a mayoral debate, and we had all 4 of the candidates up here on the dais, and I actually learned something about some of the candidates that did influence my vote. So this was a very important forum for me. So I thank you folks for putting on that type of program for the community. But most important, I want to thank everyone who's seated here today for your support and your help and all the great work you do for the Family Health Centers in San Diego. Through your generosity, you make a lot of lives much different, and I congratulate you for that. So applaud yourself for a chance. As Ben mentioned, I was born without arms. I just have this small little hand with 2 fingers. This is the way I came into the world. So I had to learn to do things in my life different. So I learned to do everything with my feet the way you folks use your hands. And I have a pretty unique life, and I'd like to share part of that with you today. Now, you're always supposed to start with a joke. So far, up here, we've had a cancer survivor, a huge corporate donation, and a baby. If anybody's got kittens and puppies, it's all yours. I have nothing to follow up with that. So actually what I'm going to do is actually turn it in reverse, and we're going to tell a story starting way back in ancient Greece. Now in ancient Greece, if a child was born with a physical disability, it was perceived as a curse from the gods. And the family, to avoid the embarrassment, would actually abandon the infant in the woods, leaving it to die. In ancient Rome, if a child was born with a physical disability, it was deemed that that child would never be able to contribute to society and would be a permanent drain on resources, and that child was euthanized at birth. So having disabilities isn't exactly the best thing to come into life with. If we move to 1959, Fran and Richard Willis, my parents, were on their way to a family of 10. They wanted 10 kids. They already had 2, a boy and a girl. Both had arms, both had legs. And then one day, I appeared. And in those days, there were no sonograms. There were no ultrasounds. Nobody knew what was going to happen until the second I was born. And when I did appear, they literally grabbed me and ran me out of the room. They would not show me to my mother. They got my father to come in. They brought in the doctors. They actually even summoned our priest from our church so that we could all get together and go in and tell my mother of this horrible, tragic news that her son was born without arms. And the doctor told my parents, you know, there is a home where we could put this baby, and he can go there and live out his meager, short lifespan, and you don't have to take it. And my parents said, that is our baby, and we will take him to our home. And I'm kind of glad that they did. The other reason that I was kind of an interesting addition to the world is when I was born, my digestive system was not fully developed. So most of the food that I consumed was sent right back out. And literally, I had to be fed once every 2 hours, 24 hours a day, around the clock, for 6 months. And that was a pretty big burden on parents who, my father not only had a job, but they also had 2 children, 2 other children rather, that they had to deal with. So I was basically quite an addition to that family. And my parents realized at that point they probably weren't going to make it to 10, that 3 was probably going to be the cutoff. Let's fast forward to 1996 to Atlanta, Georgia. I was at a conference there, and for lunch, I had stopped in a mall and was at the eatery, eating my hamburger and just, enjoying the afternoon, when a gentleman came over and asked if he could join me. Well, the guy was wearing a uniform of a Pepsi delivery man. So we sat down, we talked, and he was telling me, my life is really not going well. And the longer we talked, the more he started laying out his problems on the table. And the first thing I could think of was, well, you're wearing a Pepsi uniform in Atlanta, Georgia, the worldwide headquarters for Coca-Cola. So I could understand the guy, was already having problems to get there. But then he said to me, and you know what, it's gotten so bad I was actually thinking about committing suicide. Suddenly it wasn't funny anymore. And he said, but I've been sitting over there watching you this afternoon, and after seeing you, I realized maybe I don't have it so bad. So hardly a day goes by where someone doesn't come up to me and say, wow, that's amazing, that's incredible, it's inspirational. And I said, what? I'm just pumping gas. You do it with your hands, I do it with my feet. That's my way. Well, my father as a teenager served in World War II. He fought in Czechoslovakia, France, and then into Japan. And he survived all of that only to be taken out by cancer at the age of 33. I was only 10 months old when they discovered the tumor on the base of his spine. And he passed away, literally 10 months after my birth. And not only did he leave a family, but he left a gift that was beyond any thanks. He left us health insurance. Because he worked for the federal government, therefore, we were eligible to continue under his health care plan. And when you have a baby that's throwing up every 2 hours, health care was kind of important for me in that phase of my life. And at that time, people would come to my mother and say, look, you're all alone now. There's no way you can handle all three of them. Take Tom and put him in the home. You've got another son and daughter that needs you, and he's just going to be too much work. My mother said, no way, this is our family. And she kept us together, and she was a single parent with 3 kids. And we survived literally on her health insurance that we had for us, and Social Security, and my father's death benefits from his government service. Well, another problem that yours truly developed early on in life is scoliosis, curvature of the spine. It started when I was 3 years old. They did everything to try to get it to stop. I was put in body casts, body braces, traction, you name it, they did it to me. But it could not stop that spine. The further I grew, the more curved the scoliosis would become. So they decided at the age of 7 that I was going to need spinal fusion surgery. So on March 27th in 1966, just 6 days after my 7th birthday, I was put in the hospital, George Washington Hospital in Washington, D.C. I'm from Washington, D.C., that's where I was born. I was then put in a body cast from my neck to my waist. And I was in that cast for 24 days. And every day they tried to do whatever they could to straighten up that spine as straight as they could get it. Finally, 24 days later, I had spinal fusion surgery. They opened up my back and put in 2 metal rods that actually clamped to my vertebrae to physically stop that curve from happening. Well, after that, I was in the hospital for 18 more days. They finally released me after 46 days. My mother received a hospital bill, $200. Thank you, health insurance. It means the world to those who have it. I honestly believe if it were not for that health insurance and my mother's courageous and just all amazing ability to keep pushing me forward, I never would have made it. So anyway, I got out of the hospital, again, still in a body cast from my neck to my waist. Got to wear that for a year. Following that, they put me into a body brace. Got to wear that for 6 years. So between the age of 7 and the age of 13, I was constantly somehow in a contraption trying to keep my spine from growing any further. Fortunately, it did work. When they did the surgery, the scoliosis was at 80 degrees. At 90 degrees, it's considered life-threatening because literally you're folding your body in half. And I already have one lung that is partially compressed because of the architecture in my back, as long as a whole bunch of other problems. But basically, it stopped it at 80 degrees, and therefore I'm still standing to be able to talk with you today. We never would have made it through those years without, in addition to the health insurance, the kindness and support of our community. The Kiwanis Club basically paid for me to be in prosthetics, to have an artificial arm throughout my childhood. Back then, if you were missing a limb, you had to replace it and make it look like everybody else and act like everybody else. So I wore a prosthetic arm to school every day so that I could do all my work on my desk. But when I got home, it was like, Mom, this sucker weighs a ton. Probably didn't use that language back then. But it was heavy, and it was just very difficult to wear that all day. So the rule was, when I got home, I could take it off. Well, that wasn't the end of life. Life kept going, especially after school. And that's when I just started doing everything with my feet. I learned how to draw, color, write, you name it, I did it with my feet. Everyone always says, how long did it take you to learn how to do that? I say, well, how long did it take you to learn how to do it with your hands? Because that's what I did. I learned with my feet, as well as with my prosthetics, so I was almost ambidextrous at that point in time. So again, we couldn't have done it without the kindness of the Kiwanis Club. Also through our church. Our church had a school and allowed my brother, my sister, and I to all attend tuition free because they knew of my mom's situation. My mom, who was a nurse before she got married and started having children, then volunteered and served as the school nurse. She worked in the cafeteria, she worked at bake sales, she did everything she could to help repay the school and their church to their kindness of allowing us to get a quality education, as opposed to taking me and shoving me into a school where I would probably underperform because I would not have had the impetus to do better. So without their help, we never would have made it. All this time, I'm still a kid. I want to do what kids do. So I became a Boy Scout. But I did everything with my feet. You know, I wanted to play sports. When I got into high school, I said, this is it. I'm going to play soccer. Now back then, soccer wasn't like it is today. You know, soccer, you didn't have it all over the place. It was the first time I could get on a team was in high school. Our elementary school didn't have a team. So I went to the tryouts for the soccer team. We ran drills, we did all kinds of stuff, then we had a scrimmage. It was about 2 hours long. Next morning, I could not get out of bed. Now, I could do everything with the ball with my feet, but I couldn't handle the running. My body, my back, would not tolerate all of that running. So I could not become a player on the soccer team. But all of my friends were on the soccer team, so I said, Coach, do you need a manager? So I was the manager of our high school soccer team. Junior year, we won the city championship. So I took a challenge, and I made it into a championship. When I was 16, I wanted to learn how to drive. Well, not a lot of cars out there for people to drive with their feet, especially not in 1977. So we looked all around. We finally found a man who worked in Texas, in Houston, Texas. Worked out of his garage. He was kind of this genius inventor. And he actually put a steering wheel on the floor for me. So I could drive with my left foot and brake and gas with my right foot. Now, everywhere we had gone, everyone said, it's impossible. He can't drive. How's he going to drive with his feet? Well, we got the car. We got home from Houston. I took driver's ed. I took my driving test. I passed. And I've been driving for 35 years. I drove over 500,000 miles. To give you some perspective, I could drive to the moon and back already. And if you see my car back there, you'll see it looks like it hit a couple asteroids along the way. That's my truck back there. It's 20 years old today. So anyway, I went on to the University of Maryland to get my degree in radio, television, and film production. And during my summer, between my junior and senior year, I got really lucky and I landed a part-time job with the United States Navy at a base in San Diego, California. Now, I'm living in Washington, D.C. at the University of Maryland, so this was one heck of a score. So I spent the summer out here, and I explored this city up and down, left and right. And one of my last days, I was standing out in Lawyer Cove, looking at the cliffs and the sun and the sky and how beautiful it was. And I said, you know what? I'm going to live here one day. And I made that one of my goals, to live in San Diego. Well, I had to go home and finish college, which I did. Got my degree. Then I landed my first quote-unquote foot-in-the-door job. You know, that one you're only going to be there 6 months before you move on to bigger and better things. Well, after that, you get a credit card. Then after the credit card came the apartment. Then came the furniture. Then came, you name it. And it's called a debt. But then it came time for vacation. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to go with my family. I could go anywhere I wanted within driving distance because I had a car. Well, I had met a previous summer a young lady that lived in Cleveland, Ohio. She actually came to work in Washington, D.C. with the Navy program. So I said, what the heck? I'll drive out to Cleveland and visit Molly. So I got in the car, I drove out there, spent a long weekend. It was the 4th of July weekend. The second night I was there, she invited 2 of her friends to go out with us, and we were going to go to a bar and just have a couple of beers. And in the door walked these 2 young ladies, and the second one that walked in the door immediately took my heart. And she's out there somewhere. Where are you, dear? She's way in the back there. And we've been married. And we have been married for 28 years. Well, my wife had a daughter from a previous marriage, so that day I went from being a carefree college, recent college grad bachelor to a father, a husband, and a provider of a family of 3. And then we bought a house. And we were just doing more and more of the American dream, quote unquote. But I was still in my foot-in-the-door job after 6 years. And I realized something's going to have to change. So I went back to school. And I got my master's degree in education. I went to school part-time, and while I had my family and job during the day, and I was working evenings and weekends for school, and I got my degree. About a year later, I got a job with the United States Department of Agriculture down in Washington, D.C. I went from working in the suburbs to downtown. I went inside the Beltway. So for me, life was good. I had a great opportunity while working there. I worked with the White House. I worked with the cabinet. I worked with Congress. I worked with state and local governments. I traveled extensively. Hawaii, Puerto Rico, even San Diego a couple of times. But I also got to go to wonderful places like Ames, Iowa, Columbia, Missouri, and Yakima, Washington. But I got to see the United States, and it reinforced to me, I want to live in San Diego. During that same time, on Memorial Day or July 4th, there is a special concert live from the West Lawn of the Capitol. And it's broadcast nationally on PBS. And I ended up working on that program as a production assistant. And during my 6 years working on those 2 shows, I got to work with people like Dolly Parton, B.B. King, General Colin Powell, and Senator John Glenn, who had just gotten back from his 2nd trip to space. But my favorite memory of all was July 4th. I was standing on the side of the stage looking back at the Washington Monument with the fireworks going out overhead. Behind me was the Capitol Dome illuminated for the program. And to my right on stage was Ray Charles at grand piano singing America the Beautiful. Folks, it doesn't get much better than that. And I savored that moment and said, this is what it's all about. But then I went back to work on Monday. And I continued to work there, but I never gave up that dream of someday living in San Diego. Well, the years passed. My daughter graduated high school. She moved out on her own. And in July of 2000, a job offer became available through the Department of Agriculture to a job out in San Diego. Please go back here. I have a soundtrack. So at that point in time, again, our daughter was out on her own. We had talked about San Diego for 20 plus, or however many years. And we decided if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. I mean, it was with the government. They were going to pay for our move. They were going to do everything for us. So we said, what the heck, let's go. So my wife and I'm age 40, ran away from home. All of our family and friends are back in Washington, D.C. We're the only ones to move out to California. for once, I chose the location over the career. The job wasn't that great, but they paid for us to move out here. So I worked for 2 years with them, realizing that the job I had accepted was only going to last 3 to 5 years. After that, I had to move to San Bernardino. I decided it was time for me to end my government service. So I retired after 13 years working for the government and went out and started to explore my new home in San Diego. And I love the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And I said, how am I going to be able to do that? What can I do to really make a difference in this world? I sat inside a cubicle for 20 plus years. I've been there, done that. Time to try something new. And everywhere I went, when people would meet me, they first always see the disability. They always think, well, what can't he do? As opposed to, what can he do? And I've run into that my entire life. As a matter of fact, for the job in San Diego, it was taking them forever to make a decision. And I thought, they don't know me. They don't know what I'm capable of. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that frequent flyer ticket that I have, hopped on a plane, flew out to San Diego for a long weekend, and met the person who was making the decision. Because I wanted her to understand who I was and what I was capable of doing. And I think it helped because I did end up getting the job. So I found that, this is something maybe I need to address more, going out and making people understand that persons with disabilities have abilities. Many of them that you could probably never even guess. And one of them for me happens to be baseball. Now I never played organized baseball when I was a kid. We always just played in the backyard or down in the field or whatever. So I was never really a pitcher. I never really threw the ball. Well, here I am as an adult. I'm now doing presentations to elementary schools. The program's called No Hands, No Arms, No Problem. And I want kids to understand that I can do everything they can do, I just do it different, and that it's okay to be different. So to capture their attention, I immediately go on stage, and I have frisbees and tennis balls that I throw into the audience with my feet, which definitely captures their attention right away. Well, it also captured the attention of Cox Channel 4. They heard about my program, and they sent out a crew and did a story for San Diego Insider. Thanks, Cox. Yeah. Thank you, Cox. Because somewhere along the way, someone at Cox either showed it or saw it and passed it along to the San Diego Padres and said, you ought to invite this guy to throw out a ceremonial first pitch. So I got the call. They said, we have an open date in 10 days. Would you like to come out and throw a pitch? I'm like, oh, yes, I will. Way that Cox. So I hung up the phone. I was like a kid. I was jumping up and down. I was so excited. And then I went, wait a minute, 60 feet, 6 inches. That's the distance from home plate to the pitcher's mound. It doesn't look that big on TV, right? Can't be that way. So I got a tape measure. I went out in the parking lot and I measured it, and I tried throwing the ball. It didn't even get 2/3 of the way there. And I tried, and I went, oh my gosh, what did I just get myself into? In 10 days, I have to go stand in the center of the stadium to do this. So what I did was I called in a good friend of mine that coaches his son's Little League team. And through previous conversations, I knew he was really into the mechanics of baseball. So I said, help me. I need to figure out a system, a systematic delivery other than just getting up there and throwing the ball. So we literally sat down and I went through move by move, everything I do from the second I step on the pitcher's mound to the second ball leaves my foot, is choreographed. And I worked on it over and over. I exercised, trying to get some strength back into my legs. Well, the day came, and at that point, I still could not throw the ball. I could throw it about 58 feet. So it was about 2.5 feet short of home plate. And I said, well, the choice is, I go up and I stand in the grass. Stand in front of the pitcher's mound, throw it across the plate. That's what everyone was telling me to do. Oh, you can't throw it, just do it that. I said, no. I may never get invited to throw a ball from the pitcher's mound ever again in my life. So I'm going up on that mound. And if the ball bounces, it bounces. I don't care. because I got to throw for the pitcher's mound. So I got up there, I threw the pitch, it bounced about 2 feet short, and I knew I had succeeded in what I set out to do. So when I went back to the stands and I sat down with my buddies, I said, that was so much fun. I should do that at all 30 stadiums. Give me a beer. It was literally a joke. But the more I thought about it, the more we talked about it, and also a lot of the play that the story got from the media, from that picture, from that Petco moment, it got a lot of attention, so I said, maybe this is something I can work with. So the Pitch for Awareness Tour was born. So far, I've thrown pitches at 15 of the 30 Major League Baseball stadiums. I am scheduled I never thought I'd get to 5, and I never thought I'd get to 10, and I never thought I'd get to 15, so maybe 30 isn't so far out after all. Number 16 is scheduled next month in Seattle for the Seattle Mariners. So far, I've traveled over 37,000 miles by trains, planes, and automobiles to get to all these stadiums. My tour, the tour has been featured on ESPN, Fox Sports, all major TV networks, newspapers, magazines, and online, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, Yahoo Sports, not only in the U.S., but also in England, France, and Ireland. And I also found an article in Melbourne, Australia, and one in Japan. So it definitely got some exposure. I was a guest on the TV program ESPN's First Take back in October of 2010. And right now I've been working with ESPN since last summer, and they're doing a piece about the tour for E60, which will broadcast sometime this fall. But one of the coolest things is if you Google my name, Tom Willis, I'm now the #1 search result. Tom's But the best part of all is that out of those 15 pitches I've been practicing, 8 of those pitches have been strikes. From the mound. But more important, people are seeing the message, ability, not disability. Let me real quick read you a note I got from a fan. I was in Cleveland, young man and his girlfriend were sitting behind us, and we chatted, nothing intense, just conversation. The next day I got an email from him, and this guy's probably about 17 years old. Tom, it was very nice meeting you at yesterday's game. It was a life-changing experience for me to have been in your presence last night. It is extremely inspiring to see that you have adapted to living with a disability and enjoyed life to the fullest. I am very proud of you for raising awareness for people with disabilities. My son was born with my sister was born with a disability that permits her from doing many activities. As a family, though, we have helped her to adapt. I really like your quote on your baseball card, when life doesn't go your way, you need to adapt and move forward with what you have, and can apply it directly to my sister's situation. I will tell her about you and that you should inspire her greatly. It was truly an honor to be with you last night. Keep spreading the message. 17 years old. So I'm hoping that my message is going a lot farther than I am aware of. Again, the goal was to throw at all 30 stadiums, and who knows when I'll run into the next bill and be able to help that person get some focus on their life. When we go back, day one, they wanted to put me in a home. Well, they didn't. And I've seen the sunrise over the Atlantic and the sunset over the Pacific. I've worked in Hollywood. I've worked in the White House. I've walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, and I've walked across the Golden Gate Bridge. I've flown in a helicopter over Hawaii and a seaplane over Alaska. I've stood where President Lincoln was assassinated in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., and in Dealey Square where President Kennedy was assassinated, possibly from the grassy knoll. I've been to Pearl Harbor, and I was at the top of the World Trade Centers. And most important, my daughter always makes sure that I say that I've been to both Disney World and Disneyland. Throughout my life, everyone told me it was impossible. They told my parents, impossible, you'll never survive. Now here I am. They told my parents it's impossible, we'll never be able to go to school. Well, I got a bachelor's degree, magna cum laude, And I got a master's degree with a 4.0 great GPA. They said it's impossible, he'll never be able to drive. Now, like I said, 35 years to the moon. They said it's impossible, he'll never be able to get a job. Well, I've worked for 20 plus years inside a cubicle, and now I've done 10 years as a motivational speaker, doing things like being with you here today. And they said it's impossible, he'll never be able to have a family. Well, that beautiful lady in the back will prove otherwise, and our daughter is married, and she and her husband live in Maryland, and we're waiting for that phone call that says, hi, Grandma, hi, Grandpa. Hasn't happened yet. But everybody says, it's impossible. It's impossible. And I realize, you know what, they're right, it is impossible. But I spell impossible a little bit different than everybody else. I spell it I am possible. I am possible. I am possible. I've got a great soundbite on my website, pitchforawareness.com. Visit our booth in the back, pick up some materials before you leave. And it's Vin Scully from the Dodgers. They were replaying the pitch. And he called it emotional, remarkable, and inspirational. And I said, Vin, what? I'm just pitching a baseball. Just doing it with my feet. Thanks so much to the Family Health Centers in San Diego for inviting me to be here today. Thanks so much to my good friend Erin, wherever she's rolling around. There she is over there, who's taken pictures for me today and helped set up and run the table. And thanks to that lovely lady back there that changed my life forever. But most of all, thanks to everybody in this room. Because of your generosity, you are changing lives. You are making the impossible possible. You're helping the people that need the help the most. Again, please come visit our display in the back. And the last thing I get to say, which is the last thing I always say after a pitch, play ball.